We talked about dreams last week. This week we're gonna discuss brainwave states. And some of you might know brainwave states, and some of you might have never heard brainwave states before at all. So it's gonna be pretty like general, and then I'm gonna just have some of my own thoughts about it as well. So yeah, it's an interesting topic because I don't know, it's related to depression, how you feel, it's related to creativity, it's related to sleeping better, connecting better with people as well. So it's a really cool topic. So we're gonna start in like a couple minutes here. Feel free to put some comments in the chat about anything you know about brainwaves, and just so I can see sort of where people are at. If you've ever heard of the concept of like alpha waves, beta waves, delta waves, anything like that. Just a little while. Book recommendations. I have a huge book list on my website. It's not really psychology, but anything by Joe Dispenza is really cool if you're into sort of self-development and maybe a bit of spirituality as well. Hello, Don. Hello. Hello. Alrighty, we might just get into it here. It's exciting. We're gonna end with our Mac Miller, maybe switch to some sort of like, let's switch to alpha brainwaves. Alpha brainwaves music, alright? Alright, so what are brainwaves? We're going to discuss brainwaves. There's multiple different types of brainwaves. Most of the time while we're awake, it's essentially the signal that your brain is giving off. Most of the time when we're awake, we're in what's called beta brainwaves. And those are very, very, very rapid brainwaves like this, okay? And you know that feeling of being in those brainwave states. It's also associated with anxiety, fight or flight, being able to make decisions really quickly. But it's also associated with kind of stress and things like that. And one of the problems in the modern world is we're in beta wave state too much. And we're not in these other brainwave states. So the best way to talk about the other brainwave states is in relation to sleep. And there's other ways of entering these brainwave states, but one of them right off the bat is called alpha brainwave states, okay? So when you're going to sleep, and part of the problem a lot of people have with trying to fall asleep is they remain in beta waves. So they're kind of like, you know, and you know that feeling, you're thinking about things, you're organizing, you're like, oh, all this type of stuff, you're kind of stressed about your life, and that's why you can't sleep. And alpha brainwave states is you're organizing, you're like, oh, all this type of stuff, you're kind of stressed about your life, and that's why you can't sleep. And alpha brainwave states is you go into theta waves and then you go to sleep essentially. During sleep, you are in alpha, theta, beta, and delta, okay? You're in all of them. And essentially they get progressively slower, your brain waves, okay? So beta is like this, then you get into alpha, it kind of slows down a little bit, theta is like really slow, and then delta is like the slowest. And you're in delta when you're in your deep sleep, like so super, super deep sleep, you're in delta, and that helps like recharge your body essentially. One interesting thing with sleep is you actually go into beta wave sleep again, so the really fast one, like as if you're awake, during REM sleep. And so REM sleep is the one that's with memory consolidation, you dream a lot during it, and it's also the one where you hear about people, your body gets paralyzed while you're sleeping. Essentially your brain paralyzes your body, because if it didn't do that during REM sleep, you would just wake yourself up because you'd be moving and stuff like that, because it's almost as if you're awake. Yeah, so those are the different brainwave states, and the importance. So I think the one that I'm the most interested in is alpha brainwaves, okay? Because they're the easiest to get into and to learn how to get into through things like meditation. And one thing that I think I would love all of you guys to do to get more acquainted with different brainwave states is try to pay attention to the feeling before going to bed. You know, you're lying there, you're in bed, you know, and you're thinking about a bunch of things, but then you start kind of relaxing a little bit, and then you reach this point, and the more you pay attention to your brainwave states, you eventually reach this point where you could get yourself up again. Like, you're still conscious, you could get up, but you're so relaxed that you're not thinking about things, and it's really easy to stay there. And often it's right after that you fall asleep. And so that feeling is alpha and maybe a bit of theta brainwaves as well. Dreamless. No, so delta is actually called dreamless sleep. And so it's like, it's less brain activity and more blood flow and stuff to your muscles and things like that. So for like recovery. A lot of people, so REM sleep is prioritized by your brain when going to sleep because it helps with memories and stuff like that. If you don't have REM sleep, there's this insane study of people who, they kept them up, essentially. They forced them to stay up. It was super like unethical study. And eventually they actually start dreaming like while they're awake. It's almost like a hallucination while they're awake. And so they're essentially having REM sleep while they're awake. One way to know that you're kind of sleep deprived is if you have a nap, if you go to have a nap, like a 20-minute nap, let's say, and right away you go into REM sleep and your eyes are like twitching around. It's also where your eyes move really fast, and you dream when you nap. It's pretty common, but it also might be a sign that you're a little bit sleep deprived. Maybe you're drinking too much coffee is a really common one, or something like that. So what happens when you always so hello everyone, hello. Okay, cool. So alpha brainwave states. Another thing for really, really interesting context, okay, I really appreciate you guys if you like the live. This is awesome. Getting a lot of people joining. This is really cool. One thing that's really cool with brainwave states for context, okay, and this will help you kind of remember and understand brainwave states a little bit more, okay? When you're a kid, okay, from 0 to 4 months, your brain is in delta brainwave states, okay? So like really young kids. And that's essentially, it's almost like they're sleeping. And that's why really young kids, I mean, they're so damn cute, but also why they fall asleep so easily. They're just like half asleep, you know, and then they like fall asleep in your arms. It's because they're literally in like deep sleep. Delta waves, they're practically not there. And a big reason is because they need their body to develop at that age. They need just nutrition. They need to like, and so that's from 0 to 4 months. It's also why they're incredibly impressionable. So kids, for instance, the next is theta waves. So from 4 to 8 months, kids are in theta waves, okay? Theta waves are the really quite slow, but you're still kind of awake brain waves. Really, really good and experienced meditators can get into theta waves, but it's hard, okay? It's not that hard to get into alpha waves, okay, as a meditator, but to get into theta, you have to be quite experienced and it can be pretty difficult. Yeah, kids are like zombies. Good point. But essentially, so from 4 to 8 months, kids are in theta waves, okay? That's part of why they're so impressionable. A good person who does hypnosis will be able to get someone into theta waves through hypnosis, okay? So that's part of why you become sort of, very impressionable, and you don't have so much of your conscious thinking of analyzing things. You're almost just consuming. And that's why from 4 to 8 months with kids, it's, you need to make sure you protect them. You have to be careful about what you're saying and things like that, because they'll essentially just like absorb everything. It's also as a kid, it's also part of why kids can learn things so quickly. Okay, so that's one really cool thing with brainwaves, and part of why it's useful to learn how to get into different brainwave states is when you are able to go from beta to alpha, maybe to delta. It also is associated with learning and memory consolidation, so you can actually learn things more quickly. And so that's why kids can pick up languages so quickly and things like that. Then it goes to alpha waves for kids, so that's 8 months to 2 years. They're alert, but they're still like very impressionable up to 2 years. And then it's a combination of theta alpha from 2 to 6 years. So that's why the first 6 years of kids' lives are so vital for parents, and why we always talk about how so much of our trauma and so much of our personality and everything comes from that period. It's because you're essentially just like, you're like a, how do I explain it? You're like a pure, it's a pure experience without any sort of cognitive thinking side of it, which is the beta waves, right? When you're analyzing your life, when you're thinking about things, like when you're in your head too much, you're in beta waves, right? And so that's why from up to 6 years old, kids are just like, they're just absorbing everything. They're pure experience, right? And that's actually a really beautiful thing, but it can also be manipulated in a bad way. If people have a lot of trauma around them, they'll just absorb that, and then later they'll have to, work through that. Yes, you can change brainwave states while you're awake, for sure. There are studies that, for instance, long-term meditators, like people who meditate a lot, with meditating, you can get to alpha brainwave states, and that's not so difficult, even for like a more amateur meditator. But if you're really good at meditating, you might be able to get into theta waves, which is like really like just pure experience, or even gamma waves, which is a little more of like a hyper-focused brainwave state. And there's studies that show that experienced meditators, they can put like electrodes on their brain, and they can get into these alpha and theta brainwave states like way more quickly, okay? And why is that beneficial? Why does that matter, okay? It matters because alpha brainwave states and theta brainwave states cause relaxation. So it can decrease things like anxiety, depression. So learning how to get into these brainwave states is really important. And so you hear all the time nowadays, right? This is interesting. You hear all the time like, oh, meditating is so good. Da, da, da. Not that many people talk about why it's so good. It's good because you're training your kind of your awareness, okay? And you are essentially switching from your thinking brain, these beta waves, da, 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 which are highly stressful, to something a little more slow. And that's why when you meditate sometimes, you can have really, really creative insights, because that's also where creativity flows from, these like alpha brainwave states and things like that. That's also part of why sometimes, there's advice that like you should just sleep on it when you have a question or something like that. Your brain essentially is going through these different brainwave states as you're sleeping, alpha waves during light sleep, delta waves while you're sleeping, all this. And it can help actually come to answers, creative solutions, without you even consciously processing it. And sometimes consciously processing it, which is beta waves, can actually be bad. Like there's a place for that, but it can sometimes be like too logical, too stressful, all this type of stuff. And that's where most people are all the time. One thing that's really, really cool with brainwaves, and I was reading about this before coming on here, is the concept of flow, okay? I'd love all of you right now to comment in the chat, okay? First, if you know what the concept of flow is. It's talked about quite a lot now. But also, if there's anything that you do that puts you in that kind of flow state, okay? For me, for instance, flow state is, it's like that state where you kind of lose track of time. You're so in the zone doing whatever you're doing that you lose track of time, right? For many people, that's some sort of athletic thing. For me, for instance, I do like tricks with a soccer ball, and I often can get into a flow state. For some people, if they're a writer, they might get into flow through writing. So I'm curious if you guys have experienced anything like that, and you can comment if you've experienced flow at all, or if you haven't. And the interesting thing about flow is when you're in flow, your brainwave states are different, okay? And you kind of lose track of time as well, which is a really interesting thing. Time kind of changes in these brainwave states. So when you're in flow, It's like the athlete who explains, that they were just in the zone, right? That's a flow state. And when you're in these flow states, and you can get there through sports, meditation, whatever, you lose track of time. Like your perception of time shifts. So you can be in flow, writing something, let's say, and then hours can go by and you forget that you're hungry, you forget all these things that consciously usually you think about. And flow, and this is why learning how to get into this flow state, which is really just a different brainwave state, is so powerful to learn things. The correlation between brainwave states, yeah. So during flow, your brainwave shifts essentially from the beta, which I've talked about before, which is this really like hyperactive one. And we all know that feeling of just being alert, thinking about things going on, like, which is helpful. But in terms of being more creative, in terms of being more peaceful and calm, and also, just efficient, you want to learn how to get into these other states, right? And so with flow, you're getting into alpha brainwave states. Maybe some people theta as well, but probably not. And so, it's helpful to learn how to get into these brainwave states. And one of the ways I was trying to explain how you can start, like with everything in psychology, the way to start to learn something is to first become aware of something, okay? So that's why I said before you go to bed, try to pay attention to your awareness as you're going to bed. Don't think about it too much, but because you go from beta, right, you're kind of tossing and turning, then you kind of relax a little bit, and then you reach that state where, you could wake up. You're kind of there. You could get yourself up, but you don't. And you're almost like in between sleeping and awake. And that is kind of like alpha theta waves. So get used to that kind of feeling, okay? And then you can start, I will say that, someone asked, have something else every day when I watch basketball. You get into flow. So here's something, what about trance? I'll talk about flow. I'll talk about how you can get into a flow state, okay? I'll talk about that because that's really cool. That's an important thing. You say it happens every night when you watch basketball on TV. Here's the thing I'd say about that. There's a difference between being highly engaged in something, but it's like an external stimulus coming towards you, okay? That's kind of like you might not be in a flow state or alpha brainwave state, okay? That's, and that's actually one of the challenges in our modern society is you constantly have stimulation from external coming to you, like you're on your phone and things like that. That's, that might feel like kind of a flow state, like, or if you're playing video games and things like that, but it won't necessarily lead to the type of calmness and the creative insights that you would get if you eliminated the external things coming in. So the ideal is that you get into a creative flow state, okay? And the difference is when you're in a creative flow state, you are creating things. So maybe you're writing with no distractions. Maybe you're a dancer and you're dancing with no distractions, right? That is where the true calmness comes and the true insight and creativity as well. Perhaps it's just me being up too. It's just from being up too late each night. Can you expand on that, Kenny? I don't know what you mean by that. So how to get in a flow state? It's through actions of doing rather than receiving stimulus. Yes. Here's the thing about a flow state. Part of the reason we stay so in beta waves, as I talked about, like these like fast ones, is because there's just so much to process in our modern world, right? We're constantly just receiving things. So there's really no relaxation. We're constantly on this like high alert processing, making sure we stay safe and all this type of stuff. And that's great, but it's really bad for relaxation, and it's really bad for getting into a creative flow state. So there's two important things I'd say for getting into a flow state. First, you have to identify things that you actually truly are drawn to and like love, right? So some people might be able to get into a flow by writing. Other people, it might be sports. For myself, it's sports. It's doing tricks with a soccer ball, and that's where I can get into a flow state. I also would love to get into a flow state doing work more, but that doesn't always happen. One of the most important things, two of them, is eliminating distractions, okay? So let's do it in the context of work, okay? Especially creative work. Sometimes people think that they need like 8 hours or something like that to really, really do a lot of work. But what we're starting to understand is that, for instance, 2 hours of what they call deep work, which is where you're in a flow state and you're not thinking about anything else, you lose track of time, that can be worth more than like 8 hours of non-deep work, of distracted work. So one of the most important things is understanding that, first of all, okay? Don't put 8 hours to do concentrated work. I mean, it's just silly, okay? Focus small. What I do is I set a timer. I'll set like 45 minutes, let's say. I'll eliminate all distractions. This is why even sometimes I like working really early in the morning or even really late at night for some people. So eliminate distractions, listen to, for instance, binaural beats or some sort of music that's continuous. You can go on Spotify and just look up like focus or something like that. And have no tabs open on your computer and really focus on like one task, okay? And just for that 45 minutes, and try to think about nothing else. Don't have your phone near you, no notifications, nothing that can distract you, okay? Because if you're working, you're 20 minutes in, you're flowing, and then all of a sudden you get like a ping on your phone or something, that takes up a lot of mental energy to switch from the task you're doing to the being aware of your phone and then going back. You'll literally like eliminate the flow by doing that. So you need to really eliminate distractions for that time. Pick a very measurable goal, like I want to build this thing on my website or whatever it is, and just focus on that one thing. One trap I fall into sometimes that gets me out of flow is I'll do that. I'll pick a task for that 45 minutes, but then during it, I'll think, but I kind of want to do that thing. I kind of want to try doing that. And that's kind of a trap. Try to stay focused on the thing that you would set out to do in that 45 minutes. That can help you get into a flow state. The other thing that can help you get into a flow state is rituals, okay? Rituals are so powerful, okay? Rituals are crazy. Like athletes use rituals all the time. You hear this all the time. It almost seems superstitious. You ever see those guys, athletes, they get on the field, they like go like this and then stuff like that. Or, they put their shoes on a certain way or whatever. These rituals, what they're doing is they're essentially like priming your brain to get into a flow state or to get ready. And so don't discount the power of rituals, okay? And so there's a couple things with rituals. One, try to pick the same time you do something every day. So if you're working on your knitting project or something, thanks, Ignis. My live goal is just smashed. Amazing, thank you. Would rituals apply to day-to-day things like washing or cleaning or tidying up? Yeah, 100%. I mean, here's the cool thing about washing or cleaning or tidying up. You can almost get into a flow state doing that. You totally can. It can be like meditative, right? So, you certainly could. I think a ritual doesn't have to be some elaborate thing where you have like some weird handshake or something like that. It can be as simple as, for instance, like with my live here, studying for a couple hours before, then I put on certain music, then I do this, then I turn off my phone. All of those things could be your ritual before going into flow, right? Or for instance, if you set a timer, it could be setting my 45-minute timer, turning off my phone, and then putting on my like deep focus playlist, okay? So that could be your ritual. So if you combine the ritual with limiting distractions and also finding things that you love doing that aren't too difficult, by the way, because if they're too difficult, you'll get flustered and you'll get into the beta brainwave state, and then it's like you won't be able to get into flow. So that's why, for instance, sometimes it's really hard when you're first learning something new, because you have to be so analytical. You have to be in that thinking brain. So a lot of athletes, for instance, or when you're learning a new movement, it's hard to get into flow just because you don't have enough skill with what you're doing, right? So it can take a while sometimes to get enough skill that you can get into flow with what you're doing. So when you're first learning something, don't beat yourself up if you feel like you're having to analyze yourself so much and all this type of stuff. Eventually you'll be able to flow more because you know a few steps and they become just more natural and flowing to you. That's why so many athletes are almost able to like shut off their brain and just like perform, right? And they'll say things like, I got in the zone. Like I just wasn't even thinking and just, made the pass or shot the basket or whatever. Yeah. Thank you, Ignace. Number one gifter. So that's flow. Guys, feel free to ask any questions now. Yeah, muscle memory, exactly. Thanks for the fire. It's muscle memory, exactly. Yeah, and that can help you get into a flow state as well. What else do I want to talk about with flow? Do you guys have any questions? You can also ask just general questions as well. Yes, musicians are a great example of people who are good at getting into flow and muscle memory. To get into flow, do you have to tune out from external factors, or can they coexist? That's a good question. I think they kind of, Gav, that's a good question. They kind of coexist. But it's almost like, so a lot of people, for instance, they get into flow on their drive to work. That's a really common one. But it's kind of a weird one, right? Because you know, like the feeling like you drive like an hour to work, but you like forget what happened. You almost just like zone out. It's because you're so used to doing it. You're so in the zone. And so part of flow is becoming really familiar with what you're doing. But the other part of flow that's kind of different than like driving to work and zoning out is that there has to also be like a slight challenge element to it. So a sort of element of growth or excitement or passion towards what you're doing. So that's what makes it slightly different. And that's why when you're trying to get into flow, right? All the things I said before, 45 minutes, eliminate distractions, set a timer. But also don't make the thing you're doing too difficult, like too much at once. Because if something's too hard, it's hard to lose yourself in it. Not focusing on the drive. I think, Gav, that has more to do with muscle memory and less to do with flow. That has more to do with zoning out than it does to do with flow. Yeah, so cool. This is a really cool topic for me. And it's something like, don't beat yourself up if you can't get into flow really easily. I find it's not an easy thing to get into, but part of it is just learning to recognize when you're in flow. yeah, so. All right, any more questions here? I might wind down kind of soon. And you guys can message me anytime, or, about different topics you're curious about, things we can do live on for next week. I'll do the same time next week, and hopefully I'll combine TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, like if that's even possible. At least try to combine 2 of them so we can just have more engagement and all that type of stuff. Yeah, you can ask some questions, Gav. Go for it. We'll listen to some alpha brainwave state music. Wah, 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 wah. Oh, yes, of course. Of course, yes. You can always message me and ask me questions. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Lil Spoiled. Passing out on the couch watching sports is not flow, right? Well, that's not flow. Kenny, sorry. That's not flow. That might just be like lack of sleep. Oh, thanks for the heart. Oh, and Little Spoiled, you're on the team. Oh, you joined the team. We got 3 team members now. Thanks, Little Spoiled. I appreciate that. Oh, thanks for the heart. Appreciate it, Little Spoiled. Guys, message me anytime about what we're gonna do with the live on next week. I generally just come up with a topic that I think is interesting. But if you have any questions. So in terms of best quality of sleep, what brain state should you be in? Sleep is dependent on like all the brainwave states. So that's kind of an unsatisfying answer, but so yeah, you need both. Okay, you need all of them, okay? You need delta, like if you guys have ever done like a sleep tracker, although those things aren't perfect, you kind of learn a little bit about this. Delta brainwave state is the really slow one, right? Like as I said, like that kids are in, that you're pretty much like you are asleep. And that one's really important for recovering your body, okay? So physical, right? Like that's when your like organs are getting taken care of, your muscles, like all this type of stuff, okay? So you need a lot of that. A lot of people who don't sleep enough, they don't get enough delta sleep. And because your brain prioritizes REM sleep, okay? And REM sleep is the one where you dream a lot, where your brain waves are in beta, and where your body actually paralyzes. So some people who complain about like sleep paralysis, that's when they wake up during their REM sleep and their body, they can't move, and they like there's like a demon on top of them because they're actually like dreaming while awake, and that's why it's such a scary thing. So your brain will prioritize REM sleep because REM sleep's really important for memory consolidation, your brain, all this type of stuff. And if you don't do the REM sleep while you're sleeping, as I said in that previous study, you could eventually, if you don't sleep for like 10 days, let's say, REM sleep while you're awake, okay? And that's like kind of scary. Lucid dreaming would be in REM sleep. In terms of best quality of sleep, what brain state? Yeah, and then in light sleep, you might have alpha, theta waves, things like that. So, yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Lucid dreaming. That's cool. Yeah. Yeah. I've talked about that. I talked a little bit about that last week, but definitely a cool thing. All right. All right, everyone. I hope that was helpful. For me, the thing that I find just absolutely fascinating is flow states. Because when we talk about mindfulness, when people talk about meditation, you're really just talking about shifting your brainwave states to alter different levels of consciousness, right? And then you can just get new beneficial things through that. Yeah, delta brainwave states. So I don't know for sure, Gav, so don't take this for sure, but I know it doesn't happen right away. I think typically it's about an hour and a half into sleep, and it's like considered like a deep sleep. You know when you sometimes have to wake up from an alarm and it's like really jarring and you're like, oh, and you're like groggy the rest of the day and you're like messed up, like you know that feeling. That's because typically you woke up in a deep sleep. You woke up when you were really, really dead to the world. And sometimes you wake up really easily, right? And you remember your dreams, and that's probably because you woke up a little bit faster, you know, REM sleep type thing. Oh man, we're getting so many people joining now, guys. This live has been so amazing. I've had a lot of fun. What would be your explanation for waking up just before your alarm going off? Well, you know, that happens for two reasons. One, if you guys have ever like had to wake up early to go to the airport or something, whatever, you're kind of stressed about it. You wake up before your alarm because your brain kind of is stressed and you probably don't have the best sleep and you're not fully relaxed, right? And so your brain kind of wakes you up because you're in a really light sleep. And it's really easy to wake up when you're in a light sleep, right? And we know people like that wake up really easily to a car sound or anything like that. And when you're anxious and stressed and not really relaxed, and also like your sleeping environment's not conducive to getting really relaxed, it's gonna be easier to wake up. So yeah, there's that. Then the second one is just if you have a really consistent sleep schedule, and I actually really recommend that you do this. And I've been doing this more for myself recently, and it's been fantastic. When you have a more consistent sleep schedule, wake up time especially, you might just eventually wake up naturally before your alarm. And that's amazing because sometimes your alarm wakes you up when your body's in the type of sleep that it doesn't want to wake up yet. And then you wake up and you're kind of like, oh, you know, and then you're just groggy the rest of the day. So try to have a consistent wake up time. Yeah. All right, guys, this has been so fun. But I'm going to get off. And yeah, I'll be back next week and we'll try to combine it with Facebook and Instagram. Can you imagine how crazy that would be? You wake up to the birds. That is beautiful. All right, everyone. So have a good rest of the day. And yeah, we'll be back next week. See y'all next week. Bye-bye. If you guys want the full replay of this live, you can always, it'll be on my Facebook. Yeah, Facebook and YouTube. I'll post it. What is love? Oh man, okay. I'm sorry, I gotta play that now. All right. Bye-bye, everyone. That was fun. If you want to find my website's actually just like a Wix thing right now. So the best thing is to go to my, what's the best thing? If you go to my link tree, if you find me on Facebook, go to my link tree, my website's in there. I'll try to make it more obvious. You can also just message me, Gav, so. All right, see ya.